time to consider the path of your feet, for crying out loud.
Alrighty, welcome back to Salty Saints. My name is Hayden Holm, and today we're going to dive right into this thing. LDS Scooby sent me a couple posts that apparently were trending in the anti and Exmo community and making their way around. Let's pull them up on screen and let's get into it, because from what I understand, these posts made some members feel more hopeful than an Iranian peace settlement. So let's get into this. So first things first, we've got none other than Ashley B Therapy, the Ashley Buckner account. So this is licensed therapist, and she's posting Exclusion formed as love looks like, and then it shows the family proclamation. So LDS Scooby, let me know, how did these come across your feed? What was your initial reaction?
You know, what's interesting is that this came across my Facebook feed, not my Instagram feed. I don't actually follow Ashley B on either platform.
Who posts to Facebook except old people?
I do.
Oh, hey, there we go.
If I post Instagram, I just guilty.
Yeah, all right.
But it was usually I see a lot of these therapists that are former members of the church they're almost exclusively religious trauma and like intimacy coaches. It's always those two things together, and I'm not really sure what the correlation is there, but it's almost exclusively those two things. And so this came across my Facebook feed, which is very unusual, because I don't follow Ashley B. I don't
also,
follow anyone
in a nursing home.
Yeah. But the thing that was really standing out to me, so obviously Exclusion framed as love looks like, I mean, this is a document from 1995. So the culture has radically shifted since 1995. And I think this caption really only makes sense in a 2026 context, because people weren't saying this specifically back in 1995. Like,
you don't say. Perhaps they're rewriting history a little bit on that. They're like, hey, don't pay attention. Don't even dare try to remember when everyone was 100% on board with this when it first came out.
Yeah, like, most people would actively have said, "What? Yeah, no, duh, brethren. Why are we posting this?" That is the most common when members talk about the family coming out.
Yeah,
that's what most people said was, "Yeah, no, duh. Why? Like, of all the things you could have made a proclamation about, why this?" And then literally a decade later, we started going through same-sex marriage lawsuits and legislation. And by the way, just as a quick side note, this gets brought up every once in a while of the church has a stranglehold on Utah. That's just not true. Same-sex marriage is legal in Utah. There's a ton of stuff
I would argue the opposite. I would say that Utah has a stranglehold on the church. Oh, look at that. Put that on a t-shirt. Hey, that just came to me. Hey,
Part 2 coming at you.
Look at that. Boom.
Lasted him right in.
I mean, there's so much that we could go over. I mean, the document is literally decades old at this point, so it really just depends on what year you want to look at to make what point you want to make. But that's the reason why the proclamation was made. It was supposed to be
the thing. The thing I like pointing out on stuff like this is a certified therapist in Utah that's saying Exclusion framed as love looks like, and then it points to one of the core doctrine. Like, it's borderline canon right now. Like, it is so close to being canonized. She's like, this is what Exclusion looks like. Doesn't even mention any specific thing. It's just like the entire thing, which I think many of her colleagues would actually agree that this is actually what a healthy, happy family looks like, and how to achieve the best familial relationships and happiest family life is found within that very document, which the science actually backs up. So kind of a fun little mental gymnastics she's doing there. If I were the German judge, I'd probably give her a 9.5. Like, great form, fantastic routine, but still not enough.
Well,
all right, but keep going.
LMFT is life, marriage, and family therapist. Like, this is literally, I would imagine
licensed marriage and family therapist. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, here's the other interesting thing is there's this side comment. This is actually, I saw this one before I saw Ashley post it, and this is when I saw Ashley's, I was like, hey, what's going on here? Let's click over this one really quick.
Let's just like Lucky from Lucky Charms. Let's follow the rainbow here. See where it leads.
So obviously this is like it's a Pride post, and they've cut it out. So I'm just gonna go ahead and read it in case it's not popping up.
Yeah.
But it says, all human beings are beloved and divine and essential and accepted. The family is love. Love one another is founded upon the teachings of Jesus Christ. By divine design, love of one another should support individuals, communities, and nations. Period. So that's...
Did you just read the lyrics from David Archuleta's latest song? Look at that. That is so fun. Look at that. So they're editing out everything that could be quote unquote exclusionary or interpreted as only applying to a certain set of people. They're saying, no. Love is all you need. So they're singing like the Beatles. Love is great. All you need is love. And then they're singing the song. They're like, hey, it's all great. Everything's great. Everything is awesome all the time, 100%, except if you choose to have a family, because then that's not love. So they are okay to exclude that form of love, which is another fun little mental gymnastic that they're doing there. They're like, this is exclusionary, but this is not exclusionary, okay? To only have this type and not to have the whole straight family, happiest, scientifically backed scenario for children. Anyway, keep going.
Well, and the thing is when you read the family, A Proclamation to the World, I have always, in my opinion of how I interpret that document, it is with the children in mind. It has always been that way, that we are going to talk about a husband and a father and a wife and a mother and their responsibilities to rearing children, because they are the ones that suffer as a consequence of the parents' actions. And so cutting that, I mean, with the Pride one, it completely cuts out any reference to children whatsoever. And I think that that's a very, very big problem in our modern society, is that there's this like almost notion of children are there to meet our needs. And that's just, it's so backwards. You have children when you're ready to meet their needs.
It is Pride Month. And when you celebrate Pride, you celebrate the self. And so this is all I'm seeing in that document is a celebration of the self. It's like, hey, it goes back to that Frozen theme song, no right, no wrong, no rules for me, where we need to get Jiminy Cricket back in here singing, and always let your conscience be your guide. They're saying, that's hateful, squash that bug, get him out of here. We don't want him, we don't need him. All I need is for everyone to love and accept the lifestyle that I have and that I want to live according to the preferences that I have. It's like, what? And if you dare suggest that families should have other preferences, that is hateful. But the funniest part of all is they do it under the name of love. So both of those posts actually led with love. This is love, and it's just like, wait a second. This is love of self. This is not love of children. This is not love of family, and this is not love of duty either, which is something that's becoming a lost art these days. I cut you off, though. What were you going to say?
Well, in the Pride version of it, and maybe I should just show this part again, because I know Sam has some things to say about this part, but love one another is founded upon the teachings of Jesus Christ. The character of Christ is very much an outward manifestation of love. It is not a selfish turning inward. And I know me and Sam have talked about that a lot, about the character of Christ, and how Bednar actually has a great talk on this, where the Joseph Smith translation of Matthew chapter 4, it says that when Jesus was done being tempted of the devil in the wilderness, there's a verse that basically says something along the lines of that angels came and ministered to him. But the Joseph Smith translation fixes it, and gives a commentary that Jesus actually sent angels to John, who was in prison. That despite going through these trials and tribulations, Christ's love, his character, was to turn outward, and he sent angels to somebody else that was suffering, namely his cousin John. And that he didn't think inwardly of himself, which is what Satan was trying to get him to do by saying, turn these stones to bread, have angels catch you from the top of the temple, and I'll give you the whole world. He was trying to play on Christ's inward selfishness and pride, and he just didn't. That's just not his character. And so
No.
I
So
would
you know
say
what
that
this reminds me of? So they reference this all the time. They in posts like these, you'll hear this is not what Jesus actually taught. Jesus was the one who taught love one another. And to me, it reminds me of kind of the Old Testament. We're studying that, so it's topical. Hey, come follow me. Do your come follow me.
Heyo.
So in the Old Testament, you see a lot of times where the children of Israel, over time, they corrupt the image of God to become more similar to the nations around them. So more times than not, it turns into worship of Baal. And Baal, if you actually study it, was actually more similar. It's very similar to Christ. It was like basically the same kind of archetypal story that you see with the Savior is what you saw with Baal. But it was a cultural interpretation. It was more culturally founded. And so I see this Jesus that they worship here as the cultural Jesus. So this is kind of like the modern day Baal. They're like, hey, Baal doesn't approve of you not letting me do whatever I want, acting out on whatever preferences that I declare on my social media handles as a licensed therapist to the world, you know? And Baal doesn't like that. So how dare you? I'm going to weaponize your worship of Baal against you. But if you actually understand what Jesus Christ taught, he said, by this shall all men how do you show love to God? It's by keeping his commandments. You know, if you love me, you will keep my commandments, right? And so part of those commandments were given in the Garden of Eden, right? Man shall leave his mother and father, cleave unto his wife, become one flesh, multiply, replenish the earth. Boom. Commandments. But he also said, love one another. He said, by this shall all men know that ye are my disciples, that you have love one to another. So he's not saying go out there and start grabbing your pitchforks and start torching the LGBTQ communities and grab their pride flags and just shoot them down, tear them down. He's not saying that. He's not saying that at all. He's just saying, hey, see these commandments over here? Keep them. That's how I know you love me. And be respectful. You know, treat these guys kindly. Treat them as I would treat them, which is living in truth and kindness. But that does not mean being nice and rolling over and saying, oh, you are right. Let me just throw this pesky old doctrine out. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean for it to upset you. Oh, we don't want to trigger you here. Yeah. And so that's my takeaway from all of this.
Well, okay. So what I find interesting about her specifically is she's a licensed trauma coach, essentially, that focuses on religious trauma. Specifically for members of our faith tradition who are, and specifically with this post, who are experiencing trauma because of this doctrine, which doesn't even compute in my head. Like, if you believe in the foundation, like the foundational doctrines and principles of the church, like this is like so far removed from being controversial. Like, this isn't the thing that's like, oh my gosh, I just can't read this and not feel like I'm being attacked. So right. I for one am just at a loss. Like,
yeah. So if you pull the post back up and you look at the language that she's using around that, there we go. So exclusion framed as love looks like this. So it has undertones of saying we are normalizing harm if you accept this. So anyone who then accepts the family proclamation to the world, you have a licensed therapist out there that's saying you are normalizing harm and you are actively doing damage if you support this document. And that's kind of an ugly thing to do for a therapist these days. You know, it's like, I think that breaks some codes of ethics. I'm not a licensed therapist. I am a certified trauma coach, though. So you can see, you talked to me after the show about my rates, but I did spend the time and the $14 to get my certification. So I think I know a thing or two when it comes to the trauma world. And what I'm seeing from this is that by framing all of this as harm and saying exclusion, and then the whole document itself, there's this weird juxtaposition where the whole document itself is talking about love. It's talking about responsibilities. It's talking about duties. It's talking about happiness and family life. It's talking about children, and labeling all of that as harm and damaging is quite an ugly thing to do. So the problem you run into is if there are younger generations that are seeing posts like this coming from licensed therapists, they're going to maybe assume like, oh my word, maybe this document is damaging. How dare they? The very document that gave that teenager like a healthy, happy lifestyle that helped reinforce the virtues that most children in the church enjoy with a stable family. The dad's working a 9 to 5, the mom's staying at home, they're raising the kids, they're making it work, they're moving on up to the east side. And then the kid finds some posts like these and then starts trying to rewrite history where it's like, no, that was damage. Oh no, this is trauma. This is damage. And the therapists are saying, yes, it was. And I can help you. See, that's the devious thing. This is their marketing materials. This is them trying to get you into their pipeline. This is like, hey, this is very damaging pipeline. And then they can start charging you an arm and a leg for recurring therapy sessions. But LDS Scooby, you have something to say.
Well, it's almost like this because I was harmed by the church. Therefore, you must have been harmed by the church. And I am a licensed therapist that can assist you with that. And that feels like a very big conflict of interest to me because it's imposing a worldview instead of actually helping people resolve actual trauma that they may have experienced throughout their lives. For example, go ahead.
Well, I mean, one of the problems I think is slightly that she might not even understand like the doctrine, which is actually a problem because if she has like a client that's coming to her and saying like, hey, I have like this trauma because of, let's just say the family proclamation, the family aid proclamation to the world. I'm going to refer to it as the family proclamation because that's how I'm used to saying it. But
we love you for it.
If they're coming to her and saying like, this is causing me trauma, how can she effectively say, what about that is causing you trauma from your worldview, right? Because as a therapist, she needs to take their worldview and say, hey, why is this not working for you? And does that actually like kind of sit with what you believe?
Right. So her job is to challenge their thought patterns, right? So it's
to help them think more clearly.
Unwell thought patterns. Yeah. So mentally ill thought patterns and to challenge those and say like, hey, this is what because when you hear that, so her post actually reads like a mentally ill person that is freshly wounded from the church that's saying like, this is exclusion framed as love. And this is what it looks like. That's what you would expect some like punk rocker to write a song about, like every time I read this, for some reason, I hear Avril Lavigne singing in my background, like in my head going, since you've been gone, and it's just like, it reads very angry, very bitter. It's crazy.
Great Canadian.
And, and so when you hear that, you're like, this doesn't sound like a well-credentialed, upstanding citizen therapist that should be challenging these thought patterns. That sounds like someone whose thought pattern needs to be challenged, which is exactly why it landed on nobody else's feed but LDS Scooby, the person who is fantastic at challenging thought patterns.
Well, what's so fascinating is, as I've met with people throughout my life, I have a very close loved one that would routinely say, well, don't I deserve to be happy? As if the act of getting married in and of itself is what made an unhappy person go to being happy. That is not how it works. In order to have a healthy relationship, you must work for a healthy relationship. It isn't just bestowed upon you because you put a ring on your finger. And one of the best pieces of advice, so when I got home from my mission, 2 weeks later, my mom sat me down and said that she was leaving my dad. And that was very, very difficult for me because I had just spent 2 years teaching how families could be together forever. And to come home and realize my family wasn't necessarily working on the same thing. And that was very, very hard, and it was a time of great spiritual turmoil for me. But as I was meeting with my bishop, getting home and trying to assimilate back into a quote-unquote normal life, he gave me a great bit of advice, and he said, when you find a girl whom you will want to take with you to the temple, the best advice I could possibly give you is that you and her should go sit down with a divorce therapist and figure out what contributes to divorce and learn how to actually communicate one with another so that doesn't happen. Because you're probably going to have some thoughts emerge from your parents being
Is that
divorced.
where you came across these posts?
I mean, that was over 10 years ago. So.
Oh, okay. I got you. Yeah.
But it's one of those things where I thought that was such an inspired bit of advice of, if you want a successful marriage, go try talking to a divorce therapist with your loved one and sit down and say, what causes divorce, and try to study it a little bit, and then have really frank and open and honest conversations with your spouse and say, how do we prevent these things that contribute to a potentially unhealthy and divorceable relationship? And what things actually lead to a long-standing 50, 60-plus year marriage? And I thought that was excellent advice. And
so wait a second.
Paid dividends.
Are you suggesting that perhaps a post like this that is framing, let's say they're husband and a wife, right? The husband, he's got a 9 to 5. He's clocking in, he's clocking out. He gets home, he's tired. He tries to give a couple upsies to the kids. Gives them a couple kisses. He puts them down to bed. He's feeling great about himself. In the meantime, his wife is just between sitting through Bluey episodes and chatting with her friends on her phone all day, is maybe starting to see some of these posts in there, and those posts are starting to seed some doubts in her mind. And one of those doubts is potentially that if my husband supports the family proclamation, he is oppressing me. And so this may be a case where a therapist is actually starting to cause division in a otherwise healthy and happy marriage. If one of the spouses, not saying it could be the husband, maybe the husband's a deadbeat, maybe he's just like, he's just hanging out there. He's losing his testimony. He's just like, oh man, I this isn't doing. And then one of those posts comes across and he's like, honey, that document that we've been living by? Apparently it's harming us. This is terrible. And if she says, oh, I love it, then he's like, you're the problem. How dare you? You turned them against me, and then it turns into this whole Star Wars, Sith Jedi. It's kind of weird, but
it becomes an external locus of control rather than an internal locus of control. That therapists should be teaching their clients, this is how you go through a faith crisis and things like that, without being like, I'm going to put you into a faith crisis. Is almost how it plays out in my mind as I read a consistent amount of these posts from therapists like this one. It is like they are trying to inspire faith crises almost, rather than hey, here's a way to resolve certain things. Yeah.
So they will hip check you right into that faith crisis, with a daily posting schedule. They kind of get into your feed. You warm up to their personality. They give some social posts in there, and you're like, oh, that's fun. Look at that. And then they'll slip a couple just pops and jabs in there, and you're like, oh, that's interesting. And then they just start checking you with documents like this, like, oh, boom, pain. Hey, look at that, exclusion. It's harm. But it all begs the question, who gets to define harm? I slipped into Jordan Peterson on that one. Who gets to define what harm is? And that's the question I'm posing out to you guys. Who do you think gets to define harm in this?
Me. Pick me.
Oh. We got a gentleman right here. Sam, you tell us who defines harm.
I get to define what harm is, right?
Hey, there it is. Yeah. So you get to define everyone gets to define what harm is, except the children that are actually being harmed by bad families and bad relationships and crumbling marriages and divorces that are happening because one spouse is listening to a therapist that says, you just need to focus on your happiness. Happiness is at the toppy tip of that pyramid. And if you're not there, something's wrong. And you know what the problem is? It's the family. They're dragging you down. It's that document. That's your problem. And I can give you the key. I've got the solution right here. For only $99.99 a session, I will free you. You can step into the octagon just like Rex Kwon Do style with only $7.99 a month. I will teach you the ways how to be a woman.
Well, here's the crazy thing is, like, me and my wife, we recently watched the Jody Hildebrandt, Ruby Franke docuseries, and Jody Hildebrandt was successful and able to tell Ruby Franke that her husband and her son were the source of all of the evil that was happening in their home, even though Jody Hildebrandt was the person being actively possessed in their home. If you guys haven't seen it, sorry, spoiler alert.
Wait a minute. What are we saying by possessed? She had a tremendous desire to go on a shopping spree. It was like
I was thinking shopping spree too.
They have videos of her curling up in the corner, actively acting like she was possessed, and would require priesthood blessings to try to get the demonic spirit.
What?
Have you not seen this documentary? Oh,
No.
I don't waste my
Okay.
time with that stuff.
Yeah.
Wait, is she?
It's fascinating.
She's
on
a
psychological
social
level.
influencer, you say?
No, so Jody Hildebrandt was a therapist, and Ruby Franke was an influencer. Her and her family put all of their family blogs online, and she had some.
So this
like,
is when she was possessed.
No, not yet.
Because only
So-
a possessed person would film their family every day.
This is a huge
Try and
spoiler. If you
monetize
guys
that.
aren't
Anyway.
planning on watching it, keep listening. But it's Ruby had some serious like missteps with like she got into some controversies and it basically broke her channel, and so she went all in on supporting Jody and her therapy to build up the next big project kind of a thing, and eventually it just kept evolving into Jody basically saying that her husband was the source of all of her problems. She was able to successfully convince her that it was just her husband.
So
and her
Ruby
and her
wanted
son.
to help Jody revive her social account. Is that right?
No. Okay, so
Okay,
Ruby
I'm
and
off
her
the mark here.
yeah, Ruby and her family were media influencers.
Okay.
But they got caught up into some controversies and it tanked their channel. So in order to help with that, they hired Jody Hildebrandt as their therapist.
Okay, I'm tracking.
And Ruby went full in on Jody's program. But Jody was having some serious issues in her own personal life, and eventually moved in with Ruby's family. And anytime the husband or the son would push back, Jody would say,
therapist.
as a therapist, what you are doing is actually causing all of Ruby's problems, and was successful and able to get the son and the husband kicked out of the home for well over a year. And this is all documented. And it got to a point where this is the story of where the kid in St. George finally broke out of being duct taped in their basement.
I remember hearing that. Yeah, like
Yeah.
he was only like they only fed him like carrots or something, or they threw him in the basement because he wouldn't eat his carrots or something like that.
It was
crazy
horrific.
thing.
And while the husband was still in the home, Jody was having active episodes of possession, but was still being the therapist to this organization that Ruby helped her build. And now I'm not saying that that's what I'm not saying that is what these therapists are like, that they're all going to become possessed at some point. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, when you are acting as a licensed professional, people trust you. And if you choose to abuse that, it can lead to situations like Jody Hildebrandt. And it's because you are imposing upon
Where
your
your wife is
clients
crawling
a
on the
worldview.
walls and
Yeah.
like hissing and spitting at everyone like ah!
Yeah. And it's because you're an authority figure, and so people are listening to you. And that's the problem, is because that's not what a therapist does. A therapist helps people realize that they have an internal locus of control. They are not to be imposing upon somebody else their worldview. And posts like these is exactly that, in my opinion. Basically, I have loved ones that when they divorced their spouses, they didn't use the word abuse until they found out that that was a way to break a ceiling. And then they started using exclusively the terms abuse.
Oh wow.
Now, that's not to say that people don't actually experience abuse and they're unknowing of that. Certainly that can be the case. But when certain people are like, well, I just want to get out, what would I need to do that? Well, only in cases of abuse and adultery. And it's like, oh, okay, well, in that case, I was emotionally abused. I was never physically abused.
Oh, I see.
I was emotionally and intellectually abused and spiritually abused by my partner. And they can now...
Intellectually abused.
Yeah.
Look at that.
I just kind of threw that one in there, but...
That's a good one.
I'm not really
Why
sure.
not? Yeah.
I mean, you could be, I guess.
But you really could be,
Yeah.
I guess, yeah.
So,
Solve this math equation over here. Wheeling a big blackboard. I can't.
Yeah, I guess
Because you're an idiot.
It would be more emotional, but that's my problem that I have with these kinds of therapists, is that they are saying, because you are in a high demand religion, you are therefore experiencing abuse. And it's like, that
is nuts.
That doesn't track.
Imagine being the dad in that situation. Like you're going to work all day at the Wells Fargo building. You come home, you're beat, you're tired. You walk into the house, your wife's curled up in a blanket, like hissing as her therapist is recording it and saying, "Oh no, this is your husband's fault," and he's just like, oh, "Okay, all right, what's going on? I accepted to allow your therapist to live with us and now you're curled up in a ball. You're throwing like demonic. You are channeling Beelzebub, and you're like speaking like a Mongolian throat singer over here, and casting incantations at me. I didn't want this. I had a caprese salad at the Wells Fargo building. This is the last thing I wanted to come home to today. I'm sorry. Go ahead. I cut you off.
No, the hard thing about the Jody Hildebrandt story is that the husband had been living in a hotel for over a year, no contact with anybody in his family, because he was fully bought into this system. And he only found out about it because the cops picked up the kid who had escaped. And he was called, and he drove all the way down to St. George, and they're like, hey, we found your kid. Where's your wife? And he goes, that doesn't make any sense. That can't be true. And he actively was defending them, knowing nothing about what they had been doing. And then he was like, well, can I see my kids? And they're like, no, he's currently being hooked up to IV bags because he's dehydrated.
That's insane.
He was left out in the desert. I don't remember if he was duct taped to a cactus or something, but they left him out in the desert, and they made them like go watch the documentary. It's crazy that they were allowed to do what they were able to do. And the husband had no idea because he was following the program that was given to him by his therapist. Okay. Wow. And again, this is not to say that all therapists act this way. That's certainly not the case. But when you are when you are in a place of authority to somebody, and they are that reliant upon you because you haven't given them the tools to actually critically think for themselves, that could be the end goal. And I see these patterns through these.
I see what you're saying. Yeah. So when a therapist leverages their credentials, and they leverage themselves as the ultimate authority, they are the morning and the evening star in the minds of their parents. What they say will happen no matter what. And so they say like, all right, this doctrine is damaging. This doctrine is great. Like, I want you curled up, throat singing like a Mongolian over there, and I want you tying your kid to a cactus doing a Cheyenne sun dance, where he has to prove his manhood in the middle of the desert. And at no point is the person challenging her, because she believes fully that this person, this is a clinically, ethically licensed person who has medical professional training. So are you making a case that we live in the age of therapeutic deism, and that this is kind of a microcosm of what's happening on a much smaller scale? Obviously, I don't think the average person's going to tie their kid to a cactus or anything like that. But maybe like therapists are hijacking the family right now via kind of living with the mom by being, a social follower on social media. The mom is becoming their friend. She's adopting the ideology and the language of these therapists, and then slowly suffocating her family while her husband just kind of stands back, just like not knowing what's going on.
Well, yeah, let me frame it to you this way. Let me frame it to you this way. I saw a different video of a lady that she said, we have never seen so many people go to therapy and no one is getting better. They're just getting really, really good at articulating the problem. And they'll say something like, oh yeah, I realized in therapy that I have to be in control of every situation. And then she asks the question, so what are you doing to correct that? And she goes, what do you mean?
Well, why would they correct it? Because the therapist is the solution. So if the therapist actually cures the person, then they no longer need a therapist. But what does the therapist need? Because they've been living their whole lives in a boomer's paradise too, and things are expensive, and so they're probably like, hey, they're financially incentivized to keep them weak and kind of scatterbrained, and in a debilitated state, mentally speaking, because it means that they have to come back. Look at that! Look at that! It's just like the Apprentice theme song, Yeah.
Money. The odd thing about therapy is, so going to therapy does not mean you are on the path to healing, and you have to actually do what the therapist asks you to do. You have to actually put in the work. Oddly enough, this is the same message as the restored gospel. The natural man is an enemy to God and has been since the fall of Adam, and will be unless he yieldeth to the enticing of the Holy Spirit and becometh a saint through the atonement of Jesus Christ. That is the whole thing. The restored gospel will not work for you if you do not work in the gospel. In this very same way, therapy will not work for you if you are not actively working on the things. Now, that's the difference, though, in my worldview, is that I believe that the gospel is being taught by Jesus Christ and authorized prophets and apostles, versus a therapist is just somebody with a PhD, and we know that there are tons of people that have PhDs that don't know what the heck they're talking about. That is so true. But
did you just call out John DeLynn? Is that what you just did?
You have
Look
said
at that. Yeah.
But that's the point.
Yeah, go ahead.
You have to actually do the work, and when following true principles, like I believe the family, a proclamation to the world, it is just teaching principles. And at the very end, it says, we warn that individuals that violate covenants of chastity with their spouse, let me see really quick, or offspring, or who fail to, I just minimized it, my bad.
It's all good.
Or who fail to, okay, sorry. We warn that individuals who violate covenants of chastity, who abuse spouse or offspring, or who fail to fulfill family responsibilities will one day stand accountable before God. Furthermore, we warn that the disintegration of the family will bring upon individuals, communities, and nations the calamities foretold by ancient and modern prophets. That part was edited out in the Pride version, of it, which I think everyone can agree to that.
And they went,
everyone should be able to
rid of
agree
that
with that
completely.
Regardless of what your situation is.
When it comes to the gospel, this approach of just erasing the stuff that you don't like, which is kind of hilarious, because they basically, like, Epstein filed the family proclamation. They were just like, don't like that, don't like that, don't like that. We'll keep this in there. Don't like that. And so you look at it and you're just like, okay, so who went to Epstein Island? Mickey Mouse, Donald Duck, and Piglet. And you're like, what? What? It doesn't make any sense because you're missing the whole picture, you know? And you're like, well, what's going on? And so that's the same approach with the gospel, though. The gospel is not a gospel where you get to pick and choose the things that you want. It just will not work for you. No matter how hard you try. You can try to make the buffet style work where you're like, oh, I'll take some of this and a little bit of that, and I'll double down on that, but I'm going to stay away from that. You're not going to see the same fruits from the gospel as someone who is full in. You have to be all in if you're going to make it work. And so that's how you grow the tree that produces the good fruit that is sweet, and that produces joy. And so you have to be all in. You have to do it. You can't just say, well, this whole, I'll go to church, I'll say my prayers, I'll do all that, but, the thou shalt not murder thing, I'm not going to do that. I'm not doing that. So you're probably not going to experience the rest of the benefits of the gospel, as deeply as someone who's like, no, I'm gonna not murder. That seems like a great one.
As a question to the therapist that may be taking offense to this live, let me ask you this. When you are meeting with somebody and they say, hey, I'm actually going to go ahead and change therapists because they're not affirming that I'm right in this situation, do you think that would be the purpose of a therapist, is just to affirm them that they're right all the time? I don't think you would say that would be an acceptable use of therapy. In the same way, the way that the gospel is lined out is that this is what the Lord has asked us to do to become more like him. And there is, you have to get involved into the program and let the atonement actually cover you to change. Like, you can do okay on your own, but to have a full it's a transformation. It's not transactional. And I think that even therapists would say, if somebody is just hopping from therapist to therapist because they're not being affirmed and that they're right in their situation, they don't understand the purpose of therapy. Neither do people understand the purpose of religion and of the restored gospel if all they're doing is going into a place that is just affirming that what they're doing is correct. I don't think that tracks. I don't think that follows. And I think religion and therapy are actually a lot more similar than these therapists that make these kinds of posts would care to admit. Because you could easily say, my therapist is asking me to do X, Y, and Z. That is a high demand therapist.
Ooh,
it's the exact same scenario.
That.
I think you could absolutely
it
have
totally
people say
is.
that.
High control therapist or a high demand therapist. I mean, I would argue that Jody was definitely a high control and a high demand therapist.
Absolutely.
And so that's wild. Yeah. But that absolutely similar. It is becoming a religion where the voice of the therapist is replacing the voice of God, which is a scary place to be. Mm-hmm. And it's because some of the voices out there are contradicting truth that's actually backed up by science. So the secular crowd is going to love this. It's like, oh, the science actually supports the family proclamation as well. And so if you have a therapist coming out there and saying, no, that's harm, that's damaging, that's not great, they're actually cutting against the best scientific literature that we have, by saying that, and by not challenging those mentally ill thought patterns as well.
Well, and I would argue the family of proclamations of the world is just that. It is focus on your duty to the family. It's not duty to yourself. It's duty to how do you help those that you live with and love and care for. And if you are choosing not to live up to those responsibilities, what are the potential consequences? Again, I believe this is for the children in your home. They are entitled to these blessings. They are entitled to you stepping up to your responsibility. And if you and your spouse aren't working on it, here's your call out to do that. And if you need therapeutic help, I am super in favor of that. This is not meant to be bagging on therapy at all. It is absolutely good, but recognize it as the tool that it is. It is not the solution. It is the tool to help you find the solution, but you have to actually put that stuff into place. And I think that those therapists should agree with that. That shouldn't be a controversial thing for me to say.
Right. Therapy is the vehicle to get you to the place where you want to go. It's not the destination, is how I would frame it. So because this is a segment that I do, and in the segment, we call it Consider the Path of Your Feet. This is a point where we take a starting point that these arguments give us, and then we roll it out. Let's just see where that path goes. Where does that path take you? So if you look at the path that they're both recommending, which is saying not the family. So if you let's do away with mothers, fathers, let's do away with fathers being protector, provider, mother being primarily the nurturer and caretaker of the children. Where does that lead? Let's consider the path of the feet of the people that actually believe them. What do you think the future looks like? We'll start with Sam, then we'll go to LDS Scooby. What kind of future is this path leading us towards? Oh, you're muted.
Are you talking about like what the therapist is doing?
Yeah, so the post that they both put out there that's coming against the family, that's saying like, no, this is not great. They're erasing the stuff that they don't like, and they're keeping the stuff that they do like. And the stuff they do like is very, it's very, very bland, very milquetoast, low commitment. It's just like, hey, be nice to everybody.
Yeah, I don't. The problem I have with this entire thing is like they're trying to change a document that they don't believe in. So it's like just say that you don't believe in it. Like it's that easy, right? Like if you don't believe in these things aren't like controversial in our faith tradition. So it's like if it's not something you believe, that's fine. Like it shouldn't cause you trauma. Just admit that you don't believe it. And one thing that's interesting about a lot of these therapists is they're no longer members of the church. They no longer believe these things. A lot of them left without actually understanding the doctrines. So like they're already on a kind of a non-shored up foundation, and then they're trying to help you understand or help these individuals who are struggling understand how to think through these processes or these problems. Yeah. But they themselves don't understand like where they should be helping them. Like
I see what you're saying.
You know what I mean?
I'll see that theory, and I'll raise you a theory. Okay, you ready for this? I think what's going on here is because I work in marketing, all right? So in marketing, you're constantly, if you're going to be creating a social calendar, a daily posting schedule, it has to have an aim. And what is the aim? The aim is to drive bottom line sales, right? So that's going to be the aim of your social calendar. So who is this targeting? It's targeting people that are currently struggling with the family proclamation. So members that may be physically in, potentially mentally out, or it's specifically at the members that are currently in, but that are more progressive, that struggle with the family proclamation. You see,
but I don't know if that's the case. I think that
yes. Give me your thoughts.
I think that the people that struggle with this are the ones who are culturally in the church, that don't actually believe in what the church believes. Truthfully, that's what I truthfully believe. Right. Because I don't see how you can hold two positions at once. Like the family, a proclamation to the world, is very clear cut. It's not meant to
Right.
say like, hey, you're horrible people and other you, but it is defining what God the Father wants for his children. Like it's just outlining that process. That's all it's doing. And so
what I'm curious about is, so there's a segment of members out there that believe that one day, if they just hold on, if they just wait in the church long enough, that eventually the family doctrine will be erased, that the brethren will eventually get up with the times, that and that gay temple ceilings will become a thing and all of that. And then you have some podcasts out there, I don't want to name names, Faith Matters, that will come out there and suggest that could be a thing, and so where does that leave those members? A lot of times you have a segment of members in the church right now that are operating in the shadow faith. And the shadow faith is, I just got to hang in here long enough until that changes. And then I'll be fully fine to do whatever I want, and so they're still in. So I think she's trying to target those members right now that are either in or they are either on their way out saying, I'm not going to wait anymore. I'm done with that. I think that's what these posts are aimed at, targeting those members with an agenda of turning them into revenue at the end of the day. Another convert for a therapist, in the age of therapeutic deism. But LDS Scooby, what are your thoughts?
I mean, for me, the purpose of therapy isn't to keep people in the church or to get people out of the church. That is not their functional role. That's not their functional purpose. The person comes in and says, I want to do this thing. And if that's going out of the church, that's fine. I need help navigating a faith crisis. The therapist's job is to then give them the tools to navigate that process through a professional lens. But if someone says, I want to stay in the church, they can also provide tools to do that. The point is that it's the client who says, this is where I want to get to. I don't have the tools to facilitate that. And a therapist's job is to say, here's some things to be careful of, certainly. But they are not to impose a worldview. The reason why I feel so passionate about this is, obviously I have a family and stuff. My wife is a therapist. She has a master's degree and she actively works in therapy. And when I'm listening to these reels, on
so you have a live-in therapist too. I'm going to keep a sharp eye on you. All right,
I do.
Keep going.
And I'm not trying to cite to her as some appeal to authority. What I'm trying to say is that as I'm listening to these therapists on my reels and she's listening, she goes, they can't say that. That is not okay with their licensing. And
right.
I'm trying not to appeal to authority all that much, but then I say, well, tell me more about that. Like, given what the client has said in the video, or at least how they're being presented, what would be an appropriate response? And we go through what that could look like. And so I'm when Maddie Packer was turned into the licensing division or whatever,
she was reported.
I thought that was incredible that Maddie Packer's the one being reported and not these therapists. And it's just an ignorance on our part because we're not in that realm.
Well, she
figure out how to do it.
She basically perpetrated a secular bishop is what she did, and people are like, report her to the authorities, straight to the headquarters of our church, which is Doppel.
Straight to jail.
Right to jail. Just like the Venezuelans out there. Right to jail. So for me, I look at the destination of this argument. If you keep following this argument, that path is going to lead you. So if harm is subjectively defined by the person, by the client, because they're going to be the ones who define harm. If they continue to define things that they disagree with as harm, then they will continue to remove those from their life. And so anything that challenges them or anything that doesn't agree with them, they just kind of remove it from their life. And that destination is a point where they are coddling themselves, and it's a point where anything that challenges becomes harm. And that's a scary place to be for a lot of people. It's like, well, at that point, you can't really go out into society because you're going to encounter things that go against your narrative, that go against your story. And that's why we live in the day that we live in, where everyone is worried about microaggressions and getting triggered, and getting offended and not being offensive and blah, 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 blah. It's like that's how we got there, is by removing things that were uncomfortable to some people. And so this is the fuel that led us there in the past. And if we continue to just fuel that argument, we're going to wind up in a place where nobody can share truth anymore, because truth will be deemed as too offensive and too dangerous to people's sensitivities. We are breaking up LDS.org. Let's get into it. Let's go.
So this is, I'd be very surprised if anybody knows where I'm pulling this from, but this is called The Messenger and the Manifesto. This is in regards to, you'll find this in the Come Follow Me from last year in the December. This is an excerpt written by Jed Woodsworth, and he's talking about how George Q. Cannon, was the selected person in General Conference to stand up to say polygamy was ending. Okay?
Yes.
So coming back to your thing of if members just stay in the church long enough that same-sex marriage and same-sex sealings will become a thing. And as I read this, the same kind of arguments, the same kind of comments are being made in our day about LGBTQ things as they were in the polygamous thing. But let me just read this really quick part. So for those that don't know, Wilford Woodruff literally, back in that day, General Conference was literally the prophet just went, we will now hear from, and he just selects somebody, and they would have to stand up and almost wing a talk.
Dang.
So
sounds awesome.
The manifesto was just announced, and everyone's like, what's the prophet going to say? And the prophet stands up and says, George Q. Cannon will now stand up and talk to you about the manifesto. And then he goes and sits down. Okay. Totally passes the buck over to President Cannon.
Totally.
This is an awesome article to go and read, by the way. But he was fully bought into polygamy, by the way. He was like, we're going to continue and we're going to go to jail for this. Wilford Woodruff was in the exact same way. He even says, had the God of heaven not ordered me to release this thing, we would have lost all of our temples. I would have gone to jail. Same with the brethren, all this stuff. Anyways.
Yeah.
He told his audience that he had observed two reactions to the manifesto amongst Latter-day Saints. One reaction came from those who, quote, feel to sorrow to the bottom of their hearts because of the necessity of this action that we have now taken, close quote. The other reaction was one of smug self-congratulation, quote, did I not tell you so? Did I not tell you it would come to this, close quote? This latter group reprimanded church leaders for taking so long to come around. Had the leaders acted more expeditiously, they argued, church members could have been saved from years of suffering and heartache. Ooh. Is that not the situation that we are finding ourselves in? History does in fact repeat itself. And
it does, yeah.
Cannon said his own view differed from the second group. I believe, quote, I believe that it was necessary that we should witness unto God, the eternal Father, unto the heavens and unto the earth, that this was really a principle dear to us. Dearer, it might be said in some respects, than life itself. We could not have done this had we submitted at the time that those of whom I speak suggested submission. No one could question the saints' willingness to espouse the principles they held dear. The unmentionable sufferings of men, women, and children was credited to them in the heavens. So this is kind of my point is the Lord has said what he has said. It is up to us whether or not we want to be in that program or not. If you choose not to be, that's okay. That is your choice. You can go do what you want. But if you want to live the life that Heavenly Father enjoys, he has lined out what you need to do. And I hear that same kind of rhetoric being used even by these therapists, which I don't think is their place to be doing.
Absolutely.
And not. So anyways, again, it's about tools and it's about using them properly. And I just think that in this instance, these tools are being used improperly.
Yeah. Well, and you see that there's one tool that they are using to communicate all of this in their marketing materials. And that tool is weaponized love, is what I'm calling it, where they're saying, if you would love this community more, then you would do away with these standards of yours, those pesky little standards. You'd brush those right out the door because you love these people so much. And so they're kind of weaponizing your love and saying, Jesus said love everybody. They're trying to weaponize the love of the Savior. They're trying to weaponize your love of the gospel to get you to agree with them, which is kind of a devious tactic that they're using. And it reminds me of, what was it? Macbeth. You remember Macbeth? Man, Lady Macbeth, she was brutal. To bring about the means that she wanted the whole time, anytime her husband was faltering, she'd be like, "You're no king. You're not a man. You're just a wuss. Hey, essay." I don't know why I went cholo on that. "Hey, essay, don't be a wuss about this, man."
What
You
are
know,
a chicken?
yeah. And so then he would
Nobody.
kind of like, "Fine, it's fine, sweetheart." And so he would go out and do her bidding, you know, and then it just made things even more crazy. And that's kind of the point that we're at, is that this over feminization has been leading to a crazier, more chaotic place, where you have so many of these therapists that are leading women out of the church by weaponizing love and trying to force other people into their perspective by saying, no, this is harming other people. You know, this is really, and rationalizing everything that they're doing through that lens, while actually causing quite a bit of harm to children in the rising generation and families across the board. But I think we have just about covered everything in the age of 2026 when it comes to this post. But any final thoughts before we go? LDS Scooby, we'll start with you, then Sam.
No, I think President Nelson's counsel that there will come a time where if we don't have the Spirit, we won't be able to know truth from error. And I think that this is one of those things. I actively recommend that people read out of the best books, because I think that the gift of discernment is inextricably tied to in getting knowledge for yourself, so that the Spirit can point out, hey, remember how this doesn't agree with everything else? Do you see how this stands apart? And it becomes much more obvious the more you read and research and listen. That's why when President Oakes said in his speech, we went over this, me and Sam, last week, when he said, be wary of podcasts that don't fully understand the doctrine. A lot of Exmos took that to mean it was a call out of Exmo podcasts, and he doesn't say that. He says, be careful of podcasts. That includes even this one.
That includes pro content.
That includes Salty Saints. That includes LDS Scooby. That includes Word Radio. That includes Jacob Hansen. You should be trying to understand what the point that you're trying to make, and then go and test it, and allow the Spirit to guide you in that process. If something that we have said is wrong, you should discard it. This should not be the mantra of your life if it is wrong. But it requires you to actually do your homework and do. These are the conclusions that we're coming up with, and we're presenting it to you. If we are incorrect, feel free to drop a comment. If you think that we are correct, feel free to drop a comment. Allow people more information to actually make that thing. But it goes back to that principle of you have to put in the work. You have to fill up that oil in your lamp. And if you're not willing to do that, then you will be led by others who claim to have light. That's what it comes down to.
I don't know if this is just me, but I remember a day and age where Sunday school wasn't just, this is what I heard in a podcast that I listened to this week. Have you noticed that in your wards too? Like, Sunday school is basically everyone raising their hand and saying, I was listening to a podcast this week, and they said the X, Y, and Z, and I thought that was just great, you know. And
well,
I'm like,
I say,
can we get back into our own thoughts again, please? That would be.
I raise my hand and say, I said in a podcast this last week.
Oh,
just kidding. I don't self-quote myself.
Hey yo.
Good for you. Yeah.
I don't do that.
But I love that. I love that advice. Definitely listen to the prophet, and test out. Don't just assume that everyone's on the straight and easy. You know, test it out for yourself. Have your own thoughts. We're living in the age of revelation. I think we've moved from the age of information into the age of revelation, where you have to discern for yourself truth and error. We're in the age of home-centered church, so you have to figure it out for yourself and your family. So you're kind of on your own on this one, but just exactly what LDS Scooby said, go out, test it for yourself. You know, and a helpful tool out there is to consider the path of the feet of some of these people and what they're saying and where that's going to land you. Is it going to help you become more virtuous, more like the Savior, more like our Heavenly Father? Or is it going to lead you to a place where you become weaker and weaker, and where you have to put up more and more signs and trigger warnings and bubble spaces and safe spaces all around you, just so that nobody can damage you whatsoever? So that's something to definitely consider. One thing before we head out, if you haven't already, get into For the Strength of Dads. This is the Discord that we are running. We are trying to help men out there. If you are in a dead elders quorum, check it out. It's completely free. For the strengthofdads.com and or strengthofdads.com rather, strengthofdads.com. So get used to that URL. But we talk faith, family, finance. You can go in there. We just set up a new goal board so you can post your goals, find an accountability partner, and start making some positive changes in your life. All of that and more at strengthofdads.com. So before we head out, LDS Scooby, what are you up to and where can people find you?
So now I'm exclusively on YouTube and Instagram. My TikTok has been deactivated. I have moved over exclusively to...
And that's a podcast YouTube. For another day.
That is a podcast for another day. So you can find me on YouTube at Latter Day Scooby and then on Instagram as LD Scooby.
Yeah. And Sam, where can people find you? You're like Carmen Sandiego over there. You're constantly in a new place. I feel like every time I call you, you're in a new location.
Yeah, I'll be here in South Carolina for the next few months going to school. So,
right on.
Yeah, I'll be in this beautiful like apartment hotel rooms.
Love it.
Crazy.
Hey, that's great.
It's pretty
decent. Spacious.
Is there any people crawling up there?
Not that I can see.
Good, thank goodness.
That's a millennial mansion, if I ever saw one.
Yeah, it's huge. It's huge.
A boomer would call it a tiny home, but I'm saying it's just what I need.
Thank you, taxpayers.
There we go. Awesome. Well, until next time, my name is Hayden Holm. This is Salty Saints, and if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe, hit that notification bell, because we are trying to reach more men, more dads. We're trying to wake up more elders quorums, and so yeah, that's gonna tell the algorithm to send it out to people just like you. And so if you could do that, that would be fantastic. But until next time, we will catch you guys.